Live, where we welcome in baseball personalities, talk about the biggest news of the day. I'm Nate Fryman, here with John Heyman. I'm filling in for Jenny Dell. Got a lot to talk about. Every Thursday, we'll have a different baseball guest with us. That date and time could shift throughout the playoffs, so stay tuned on the FanCred app and our social handles at FanCred and at Twitter. You can see us live on the app and on fancredsports.com/on-air. In addition to covering some of the great stories behind the rivalries, we're here to give you, the fans, a chance to come live with us and ask us anything. Here's how this works. To ask questions live, you need to be on the FanCred app. Hit the fan line button in the top right, go onto our virtual green room with our producer, and they'll take it from there. You can also put your questions in the comments section, and we'll get to as many as we can. Tonight, we'll be welcoming in a trio of great NLCS-related guests tonight. But first, John, let's talk about a couple of the off-field incidents from the last couple days. The Astros possibly spying on the Red Sox dugout, and what happened with Manny Machado and Aguilar at first. What are you hearing about both these incidents?
Well, first on the Astros, maybe not, I'm naive, but like MLB, I'm going to buy their explanation that they were concerned about the Red Sox. The Red Sox are great at figuring out how to decipher what pitches are being tipped, which pitchers are tipping pitches, and it's a talent, it's a skill. I'm not saying they're doing anything wrong, and I think perhaps the Astros were worried about this. I've heard, and I'm not sure, I don't think they'll confirm this, they were concerned about Garrett Cole. They think Justin Verlander is such a veteran guy that he'd figure it out and it would be no problem. But Boston obviously figured it out with Luis Severino and the Yankees, and they took big advantage of him, and they didn't want that happening again. So maybe I'm naive, but I'm kind of buying Houston's story here. I don't know. Everybody tries to gain an advantage. I do think that's true. We saw that last year with Boston and the Apple Watch. They got a little bit of a punishment, and I think MLB is handling things correctly. In terms of the Manny Machado thing, it's been a very interesting postseason for Machado. I don't think I've ever seen a superstar free agent player have such a good postseason, show off so many talents, and probably hurt himself on the free agent market before. I mean, this guy has been fantastic. He had a laser home run in Milwaukee, hit a enormous home run, three-run job against the Braves to wrap up that series. He's played fabulously at shortstop, but so many little episodes, little incidents, I think are adding up, and I think some teams might take a hard look at it. I wrote about that on FanCred today. I had 3 executives say, we got to consider everything, including all of these little episodes. So I'm not sure that it's going to cost them that much. I think teams still go on talent. I'm not sure he's going to get the $325 million or more that Giancarlo Stanton got, but I still think he's going to get a huge deal. I'm not going on a limb saying that Philly is obviously going to be in big for him and probably Bryce Harper as well. Though certainly, I think everybody thinks they're going to get one or the other. And I think Machado's going to do fabulously, but I did not like the kicking incident in Aguilar. I was even more upset than Aguilar was. It was pretty clear that Machado did it on purpose. And I understand Aguilar probably should have gotten off the base a little quicker, but, he was clearly kicked, and it was clearly not an accident, as MLB decided. Now, if this was in the regular season, maybe he would have been suspended and he would have deserved it. But in the postseason, I think they felt that a game suspension was probably too harsh, and I get that as well.
So as far as Manny goes, could end up with possibly Yankees. I hear that's one of the teams. How does the fact that as a shortstop now, but with a proven track record at third base, how does that help him with potentially a long-term deal?
Yeah, I think it's going to have more teams in play because you can play short or third. People said the metrics weren't as good when he was with Baltimore, but he's gone over to L.A., whether they're positioning him better or what, I don't know. But he's playing a very good shortstop right now for the Dodgers, and we know he's one of the best 2 or 3 third basemen right now and probably one of the best 5 third basemen of all time. So he's going to do fantastic despite the episodes. And I don't like these episodes. I don't like the kicking. I didn't like the lack of hustle that we saw in Game 2. It's nice that he was honest about it and said he's not Joe Hustle or Johnny Hustle or whatever he said, and it's not his cup of tea. I give him credit for being honest, but I do not give him credit for that lack of hustle. But I do think Philly will be in play. Yankees will be in play. St. Louis probably in play. I mean, we've got to remember the Cardinals tried to sign David Price. They tried to sign Hayward. And then before that, they tried to sign Albert Pujols back. So we think they've got a little bit of money sitting around. And Jerko could be a kind of super utility type player who could play a bunch of different positions if they get Machado in there to play third base. My opinion and my belief is that Machado wants to be a Yankee. His family goes to New York when he's there. They seem to love it. He is from Miami. So I think he wants to stay on the East Coast. He seems like a short timer in L.A. I think they are happy with that. I don't think they want to re-sign him. They're happy to bring Corey Seager back. But I think there's going to be still plenty of action on Manny Machado. But there'll be a couple people who are maybe a little bit with their hands off because of what we've seen so far in the postseason.
Very cool. Well, right now we have Doug Melvin backstage on the fan line. Let's bring him on.
There he is.
John, Nate,
how you doing, Doug?
Doing fine, thanks.
So, Doug, what you really helped build these Brewers. There's no question about that. I mean, you brought in a lot of these players. You brought in Knebel, Hader. I mean, when you got there, the team was really struggling, and I think you did an excellent job building up the team. And same with Texas. How do you look? We went to coffee when I was in Milwaukee, and there were all sorts of people recognizing you and congratulating you for a job well done. How do you look at this team right now? Do you look at it with some pride that you were a part of this?
Yeah, very much so. It's but you know, the scouting, the player development people that worked underneath me, baseball operations. There's a lot of people involved, front office members, but it was a lot of fun. And while we weren't playing well in 2015, that trade deadline and that season was probably one of the highlights of going back in a disappointing year because we had traded for Zach Davies. We had made the Gomez for the Hader, Santana, Brett Phillips trade. And we knew at that time that we were probably going to have to move some players. And in that year, 2014, we were in first place 152 days of the season. And we had some good players, but we didn't have a good team, if that makes any sense. What David Stearns has done, he's gone out and gotten some good players to add to those group of players that were here. And Craig Counsell has done a great job to molding them into a team. So you can have good players. We had, during those years, we had very good players. We had Chris Davis, Gene Segura, Jonathan LaCroix, Will Smith, Maldonado, Scooter Gennett. They're very good players, but for some reason, and maybe some of it was my fault, but it just didn't blend to form a good team. What the Brewers have today, they have some good players, and they also have a good team, and that's a credit to Craig Counsell and the coaching staff putting them all pointing in the right direction and playing very well.
Hi, Doug. It's really nice to meet you. Thanks for coming on. I'm really curious with so much experience in baseball. In how has the rise of the analytics really changed the way that the front office operates?
Well, it just gives you a lot more information to digest, and I think there's still a lot of analytical information that is still being processed and. When you talk about the scouting aspect of the game, scouts will go out and they try to identify, subjectively, they try to identify 6 main criteria of a player from, can he hit, power, run, throw, character issues, whatever. And the scout has his criteria. I think on the analytics, there's a number of different formulas that people are using right now. And I think at some point you're going to find out which are the 10 most important. This is always the thing that I challenge an analytics staff with. You give me the 10 most important criteria and the analytics that can be helpful to us performing, identifying talent, or to put into play for game management for your managing and coaching staff. So, sometimes things work on a given year, and a few years later you find out maybe that doesn't have the impact that we want it to have. So there's so much information in baseball that can that gets the minds going. I think the team that succeeds is a team that's going to blend scouting and development and the analytics together. And I look at the Brewers team, and I think it's a really good blend. David Stearns has come in, and they've have a very heavy analytics staff, and I think some of the players that were there, the Knables, we traded for Knable in January, and the Zach Davies and the Haters, and some of the players, Domingo Santana. A lot of those are from a scouting background, but also analytics. I used both analytics and scouting, and people are very secretive to what they use in the analytics and what they want to use, and I think some teams probably use it better than others, but you still have to make decisions on the players. So the combination of both scouting, player development, and the analytics, I think, is the true form of them combining together is going to lead to success.
We should credit you for bringing Counsell into the organization also. You had him in the front office and then promoted him to manager. I think he's absolutely terrific. I think he's kind of a baseball savant. But the one I wanted to ask you about is the Hader deal. I can recall at that time, and that deal was done with Houston, and I know David Stearns was part of that front office in Houston. And Stearns has made a lot of great trades for Milwaukee. He really has, and a lot of great cost-efficient pickups, and it's fantastic that they are there. And a $100 million payroll when the other teams average at $200 million, that's quite a disadvantage. So he's done a fantastic job. But to take you back to that Hader deal, I can recall at that time there were some kind of rumblings from Houston that, well, we know Hader is pretty good, but he's only a reliever. Well, we see what kind of a weapon this guy is. Right now in the postseason, he's one of the 3 or 4 biggest weapons that we see among the final 4 teams. Did you see something in Hader? Was that an analytics get? Was that something from a scouting standpoint? How did that trade come about, and how were you able to get Josh Hader for the Brewers?
Well, we thought there was a chance of doing something with Houston. And what we did at that particular time is that we'd sent a lot of scouts out to scout the Astros system. And so a number of scouts saw Hader. And then the analytics, we obviously asked for their viewpoint on it, and they both came together. The one question was, like you said, he's just a reliever. My next question was, is he a high leverage reliever? Is he got a chance to be? There are relievers. There's lots of relievers in baseball today. So what level of a reliever is he? And our people felt that he had a chance to be a high leverage reliever that someday might be able to start. And it's like I look back and say, with the game today, could you imagine if Randy Johnson was a reliever? But they decided to have him as a starter at that time. It took him a long time to develop, and he ended up being a Hall of Famer. But our people said that he was going to be a high-end reliever. And I would say in 2015, the value of relievers is not the same as it is today in today's game. I think the value of starters then was probably.
Doug, I want to ask you at this point, I mean, you did a great job with Texas. You did a great job. And Texas was very bad when you got there, and they became a playoff team. And Milwaukee, obviously, you had some great runs, 2011, fantastic. And you made some great trades that have helped this team be so good. And you stepped aside a couple of years ago, and David Stearns came in as the GM. So, I've always known you as a very energetic fellow. But obviously in this Mets search, they're running the gamut from the very young guy, analytic guy, to very experienced guys. And I think, they've identified some very good people, including yourself. And I just want to ask you how you feel right now about potentially, right now you're working with the Brewers, but the GM is a 24-hour-a-day job. How do you feel right now about the potential of this job and the Mets?
Well, that's in transition to an advisor, but I'm a baseball and get away from the game. I don't ever get the game. Probably for that. You guys are baseball too, and no, there's certain jobs that be intriguing and interesting, and there's others that may not. And I'm at least willing to listen on certain positions, but the game is always blood. Love the challenges. I love scouting and development, the nuance of family blending together, and I just love the people in the game. But it's always a system today radio and people ask if I missed data activity. I said watching development player. For example, the 7th round for us. I remember Maryville and asking Nichols farm director, Joel Young, outfit instructor. I said, "What do we have in this place?" And they both this little cringe on their face. He's played baseball. And I said, "Well, that's what's available in the 17th round." So I said, "Try to see if you can make league ball." And they worked extremely hard doing that. Renzo grasped all the instruction that was given to them and became a major league player. So watching their players develop from where they started up, grassroots starting up, that's a lot going out making a waiver like David Pythagoras and watching perform. Those are the things that you're about the inner. You seeing those players that succeed that maybe people didn't think would succeed. One of my movies would be called about the reason I like the movie, and I've told all the scouts develop to watch the movie. It's because the owner didn't know about horses. They had a horse that was small. They had a jockey who was beat and battered. They had a trainer who was bold. So there were four people there that the horse that odds were really against went on. And it's a very good story, and that's a lot in football. I love players who don't count that go play at the league level. Success. Why the excuses get flown whenever the opportunity. And the mental situation. Talk to them, see how that time. But Big Bird on the street retired. I guess not totally retired yet.
Very good. Very good.
Great. Well, thank you for coming on, Doug. It was great having Doug. John, I'm curious what your thoughts are. We got Gorman Thomas on right now. Hi, Gorman.
Hey, how y'all doing?
Hey, Gorman, it's John Heyman. How are you?
I'm living the dream.
I know you are. You're pretty excited about your Brewers this year? I know once you get drafted, once you start playing for Milwaukee, it seems like you're a Brewer for life. So what do you think about what's going on there this year?
Well, that's a true story. They're playing really good baseball, and the fans are just going wild, and looking forward to L.A. coming in here and see if we can take care of business.
I know you're a big fan. What is about this team in particular that's enabled them to get where they are? I know you were part of the 82 team that made it to the World Series, the only Brewer team to do it. Obviously, we know that was a big hitting team with yourself, with Molitor, Yount, and so many other big hitting stars. What is it about this team that's enabled them to do so well?
Well, it's a good mix, good blend, good pitching. They got some speed, pretty good defense, put numbers on the board. But one of the biggest keys to it is that even if they happen to be in a deficit, say midway or even 3/4 of the day of the game, they could come back and win ball games. So it was never a case in point where they gave up, just played hard, and they had a lot of take-em backs.
Hi, Gorman. It's Nate Fryman. It's really nice to have you. I'm so curious about what it was like playing for the 82 team that went to the World Series. You hit 39 homers that year. You had a 45 home run season. Played with some legends. What was it like being part of that group?
Well, the best part about it is that no matter who you are, you could be the 28th guy on the end of the bench. You were still part of the team. It was all for one for all. We played as a unit. We never had anybody dog it down the line. Nobody was ever late for the ball game. Just anything like that was never a happenstance. When you came to the ballpark, it was nothing but business. And then after that, we had quiet time. How about that?
Very nice. Very nice. We talked earlier when you first came on about being a Brewer for life. Now, you're from South Carolina. I think you're a big star in many sports, but you were drafted by the Seattle Pilots. And so it's just by your good fortune that you ended up in Wisconsin. And I read on your Wikipedia that you carved duck decoys. So you were like made for being in Wisconsin. But you're not the only one. Jim Gantner seems to have hung around, and Augustine, and several of the announcers were on the Brewers teams. What is it about Wisconsin that attracts you and keeps you there?
Well, the first and foremost reason is that we have 3 grandchildren. So that means that I'm never going to leave, or my wife, Susie. But as far as the playing baseball, it's a wonderful place to play. Has been, always would be. Rabbit fans, prior to, let's see, the first season was 1970 here. And prior to 78, didn't really win a whole lot of ball games. And then they made a move, brought over George Bamberger, and first year, right out the gate, we won over 90 games. And from 78 to 82, we were actually a contender, and it made the game, a lot of fun to play. And it was fun going to the ballpark. And, when you're around guys that you're going to be around for, 8 months, you got to love your brothers. Yeah, we had a lot of characters, and we all got along really well, seriously.
That's terrific. Did you know when you were playing that Molitor and Yount were Hall of Famers, did you say to yourself, I'm playing with a couple of Hall of Famers here? Was that clear at that time?
Absolutely not, because they were part of the machine. But that being said, they were very unique ball players. I mean, Paul, I think he was drafted as a shortstop. The incumbent at that point in time was Robin Yount, and Robin was fantastic. So they put Paulie at second, then they moved him over to third, then they put him in the outfield, and then they made him a DH. And Pete Rose had a saying or a statement saying that if Paulie had been hurt as often as he had been, he would have probably surpassed his hit total. But when we were playing as teammates, all we knew about them was both of them came to the ballpark ready to play every day. Both of them played as hard as they could for 9 innings, or if extra innings dictated, they could add that little extra. But they played hard, and they were both fantastic ball players and also fantastic teammates.
Gorman, I'm curious how you feel about the way the game's evolved over the last couple of years, whether it's because of analytics or player development. People are throwing harder. There are a lot more strikeouts. There seem to be certain lost arts like situational hitting behind runners, even running the bases. How do you feel about some of the ways the game has changed on the field?
Well, I think some of the obvious ones, first of all, it seems to be all about statistics, using the percentiles. And I mean, we never even dreamed of having such a dramatic shift on certain players, even though, they were 98% correct. But we never saw that, the only team that I could remember that I ever saw shifted like that was the Minnesota Twins when Gene Mauch was there. And when I would come up to bat, Wilfong, the second baseman, he would stand right behind the second base bag. And he was doing calisthenics, And I told the umpire, I said, what the hell is he doing out there? He can't do that, So I told him to stop doing that. But, just trying to disrupt your, your concentration. But the ongoing things that I'm not really big on, the first one is that you can't break up the double play at second base. You learn that in the Little League, okay? When you're a Little League player, you're 8 years old, 7 years old, whatever it may be, that's the way you were taught to play, all right? You go in as hard as you possibly can, but you don't go in with your cleats up. You're not trying to spike somebody up around the belly or something like that. You just want to try to hit him as hard as you can to disrupt the double play. So that's number one right there. I mean, that's part of the game. It always has been. I thought it was always going to be, but you never know. Then we have what would be the other thing? Okay, you can't hit the catcher. I mean, they're dressed like a samurai warrior. They got all the gear on, I mean, I busted my knee going into Bob Boone in the playoffs in '82. It tore my knee up a little bit. But, here again, you don't want a cheap shot. You're not in the game to, the cheap shot and take advantage of someone's helplessness at a certain individual point in time. You play hard. You get a reputation as a hard-nosed player. I think that I was pretty well known for somebody that came in hard. Hal McRae was one that came in hard. Don Baylor, he came in hard. But see, that's the way you're supposed to play. There's only one way to play, and that's as hard as you can. Then, you got this thing, where you point to the home plate umpire that you want to put the batter on first base, intentional walk, saving time. I mean, I've seen it more times than people would believe. We were in Toronto one day. Reggie Cleveland was pitching for us, and they wanted to put the arm out, put the guy on. Reggie threw it off the backstop. 2 runs scored, and we lost the ball game. So I mean, it's all this craziness. I think replay has its place. The umpires are human, and it's a bang bang situation. I mean, Billy Bob, whomever out in the stands, he thinks he can be infallible as well. But, they're human. You can't. And I hope to God it never gets to a situation where we're going to be calling balls and strikes by a robot or radar or whatever else they're going to come up with. You got your real good umpires, and you've got some that are not quite as good or maybe not even average. But who are we to be critical of him? If he stinks, you can tell him he stinks. All right. But you got to be able to have a little conversation with him. I remember when I would, my first big league spring training, we were playing in Phoenix against the Giants, and Jim Quick was the umpire behind the plate. And I had Jim in the minor leagues prior to that day. So the first pitch was low. I turned to Jim. I said, that ball was low. He says, Gorman, that ball was a strike, and so was the next one. So I kind of learned my lesson.
Right? That's not right.
But it was great. I mean, they had a lot of guys you could talk to. I mean, I've still kind of email, play tag with, Drew Coble. What's his name? I can't think of his name off the top of my head. But he sent a picture of me with me getting the game-winning hits against the Cardinals, Dave Phillips. And I thought he was the best umpire. He and Steve Malermo, I thought, were 2 of the best. And I've got a nice picture. He's looking over the shoulder of the catcher. But, they were your friends, too. Some guys don't have a personality. Those are the kind of people that they don't have anybody to talk to. So you have to take them under your wing a little bit and tell them to chill out. Or go take a pill and you'll be fine.
I like the way you talked fondly of busting up your knee at home plate. And it's nice that you have some positive memories about umpires. That's terrific. I know you're really following the Brewers series, but did you happen to see the Mookie Betts almost catch over the fence, the Boston-Houston game? And what did you think? Did you see that? And what did you think of that call? And what do you
absolutely,
think
I saw that. I saw that. If they want to get away from doing things like that, or the possibility of making a great catch, you're going to have to raise the fence. But that being said, it is what it is. He, to me, looked like he was going to catch the ball. It really did. I mean, some guys can get up there, and get up and, I mean, some guys, they go up with their face toward the fence itself and they'll hold a hand up. I mean, what are you trying to do? Catch a Frisbee? But that was a good effort. I do believe he was going to make the catch.
Very good. So you like that call. You thought that was the right call. Very nice. Very nice. So what are you doing these days? I know you had an establishment with Pete Vukovich for a while, and I got a grill, I think, at the stadium. What are you mostly doing these days beyond carving out duck decoys?
Well, it's been a long time since I carved them. I carved them when I had my shoulder operated on in '84, and there was a wildlife artist around in our neighborhood, and he had painted 2 portraits of me. There's one behind me, if you can see it back there.
Nice.
Yeah, that's one of them. That's the foul tip. My dog was climbing back in the duck skiff, and I'm getting ready to fall out. They called it foul tip. But no, my wife and I, we have a barbecue sauce business. We call it Stormin' sauce, and it's damn good. It really is. So we do that. We have 3 grandsons, 2 grandsons and a granddaughter. My 2 grandsons, both of them play baseball, basketball, football, lacrosse. They love to fish. I mean, it's awesome. So, never a dull moment. And, well, I got a radio interview back in South Carolina tomorrow morning at dawn 30. So, going to visit with some folks that I played Little League ball back, let's say 60 years ago. So doing that, and also we're writing a book. I have a friend of mine, Barry Levinson, and he and I have been writing a book for almost 2 years now. And he's a maven as far as finding things that I don't remember about until he brings them back to my forefront. By the way, Nate, I did a short little interview, not an interview, but a little bit of looking you up. And you played in the North Woods Leagues or the Northwest League. I actually played in Billings, Montana, the Pirate League here. But then you went to Midwest League. I was in there twice. And then you were in the Texas League. I was there one time. So, man, that's cool.
We hit all the
– in the middle of it. My times in minor leagues was great. I loved it. Made a lot of friends that I still in contact with.
Any small town that you're particularly fond of?
Yeah, there was quite a few. I mean, in Caldwell, Idaho, we had 6 guys to one room over a pool hall, and we had what was a close semblance to a tombstone pizza that they made in the pool hall, and that was dinner after the ball game. Oh my Lord! I mean, you name it. I played in some really bad places and really nice places. So we got to go to Hawaii in '74 for 2 visits, 5 days each trip, and then in '77 we went over there once as well. But yeah, it was wonderful. Wouldn't want to change my minor league career, and I had some really good tutelage from some certain managers. One of them that comes to my attention real quick was John Felsky. John threw extra bat practice to me basically every day. And after we were done, we picked up the balls. He told me to go fishing and come back just in time for taking infield before the game. So he was very important for my life. And the same thing with Sandy Johnson. Sandy did the same thing in A-ball. So you have to be fortunate to have the right people guiding you down the line. They did that.
Very good. Very good. Gorman, it's been a pleasure. You're quite a character, just like they say.
You know what? When you do something like this, you got to bite your tongue to make sure you don't let the tongue start getting you in trouble. So I'm sitting here right on edge. My wife's she's upstairs. She couldn't listen to it happen live right here, so she's upstairs in another room. But thank you all very much for having us. And as far as my forethought is that I think the Brewers are going to come through and win the next 2 ball games and qualify for the World Series. That'd be a real treat for everybody.
Nice. They'll have to bring the '82 team back to join in there and be part of the celebration and throw out the first balls and all that if that happens.
Oh Lord, I'm the one that's got more hair than anybody of the rest of the guys.
You're in the lead.
Charlie Moore, Jamie Easterly, Cecil Cooper. I mean, right down the line. They all lost their hair, but I'm alive and well.
Good for you. Good for you. It's been a pleasure.
All right, great to talk to you, Gorman. Thank you for coming.
What a character.
What a pleasure. I could listen to him tell stories, I think, for the rest of the night.
Fantastic.
But right now we have Steve Sachs ready on the fan line. Former played all over the place, longtime Dodger, Yankee, White Sox aide, played in the playoffs, so we got him ready right here.
There he is.
Hey.
Saxy, how you doing?
What up, John?
How you doing? You look good.
Thank you. You too. How's it going?
We're good. So what do you think? It's the 30th anniversary this week of the Kirk Gibson. Somebody told me something I didn't know. Were you on deck? And what do you remember from that exactly? I mean, I'm sure that was Tommy's instruction. We were shocked. We didn't think he could walk at all. He hobbles out there, hits the home run, and that celebration will be remembered by everybody forever. It's been played a million times. What do you recall from that? I was there. I remember it. I remember interviewing Eckersley.
Well,
what do you remember?
Well, you were a writer. You were one of the beat writers, I think, at the time, right, John?
Yep, I was.
Yeah, and I just remember being on deck, and I was kind of surprised when Gibson came out because we all felt that he had no chance of playing. He wasn't even dressed for the game. And then about the 7th inning, he started getting dressed and started hitting off the tee. The bat boy, Mitch Poole, came and notified Tommy after Gibson's instructions to him that he could go ahead and try to pinch hit. So I was on deck, and the pitcher was ninth, and then of course I was a leadoff hitter, and then here comes Gibson out of the dugout. I was pretty surprised about it. I thought Dave Anderson was going to pinch hit for the pitcher, but no, it was Gibby, and so I was just thinking about during that at bat how to win this game off of Eckersley, because Gibby had 2 strikes on him quickly, fastball was being thrown right by him, and then all of a sudden he throws him that backup slider with 3-2. And he caught it right at the meat of the bat, and there it went. And then I was thinking, well, I don't have to worry about this anymore, because as soon as he hit it, I knew the ball was out.
Wow, that's incredible. One of the great moments, really, in baseball history. When you watch this Dodger team now, 1 game away from the World Series, they've gotten close in the last couple of years. Is this the year for them?
Well, in some ways, you could argue that this team is better than last year's team. I mean, the Brandon Morrow is not with the team, and a few of the other guys, but Max Muncy wasn't there to hit 35 home runs as well. This team has had to scratch and claw its way to get into the position that it's in now. They had to put it on towards the end of the year, because at one part of the year they were 10 games back, so they had to really put on the accelerator and find themselves into the postseason, which was by the skin of their teeth. And here they are. They get into postseason, and now they're 1 game away. So they've had to fix things this year. They had to right some wrongs that were pretty glaring. And the team has done it basically by the way that they can pitch and hit home runs and and strike out. That's kind of like the double-edged sword on the offensive side, but that's what they've done. They put it together, and here they are.
I'm curious, what's that picture behind you on the wall? Is that a celebration of the '88 team, or what is that?
Yeah, that is. That's a collage of the '88 team, John, and it's a pretty cool one. But this is the one I think you'd like better. This one over here was this is a very rare painting, and this is the original that was painted by Opie Otterstad, who was the 2006 Painter of the Year. Oh, there's my dog. Don't worry about my dog. And so what he did was, this is a picture from a snapshot in 1922 of Babe Ruth, with all these kids around him, because he loved kids. You know how much he liked kids. He grew up in an orphanage. And so the painter painted this snapshot onto this big canvas, and then he supplanted the faces of those kids with current Hall of Famers when they were kids. So you can go through here and you can pick out all these Hall of Famers when they were kids.
Oh, funny.
And it took him 8 years to paint that painting, because he had to go to some of the courts, some of the deceased, and get permission to paint to get the pictures of them to paint it. So it's a really cool painting, and
cool.
I'm glad to have it.
Very cool. So Nate's asked our previous 2 guests about the game today. I mean, you're remarkably well preserved, but I covered you in the 80s and 90s. It's been a while, and the game has changed, and some for the better, maybe not all for the better, but obviously we have the analytics, we've got the shifting, a lot more home runs, not as much hit and run, very little bunting. What do you think about how the game has evolved?
I don't like it myself. I think it takes away a lot of the human element. You can't argue balls and strikes. No engagement with the infielders anymore. You can't go and take those guys out. When I was learning to play second base, it was get the hell out of the way or they're going to cut your legs off. And today, there's no worries about that at all. It would be so easy to turn a double play today. I think I could do it at 58 years old right now with the way that the rules are. You can't run the catcher over. You can't pitch inside. I think what we're seeing, gentlemen, is the wimpification of the American sportsman. It's not only in baseball, it's in football too. You can't lower the shoulder and nail a guy out of bounds. You can't tackle a quarterback and land on him. You have to negotiate him to the ground or negotiate him out of bounds today. And I think I just think that this is the whatever you want to call it, the homogenization of the American sportsman. Everybody's got to be the same. Nobody can be hurt. And there's no individualism anymore. And I think it's just crushing for the game. You want to know why people get tired of the pace of play? You want to know why people don't like it? And they say the younger generation doesn't like it because nobody hits and runs. The excitement of speed is not in the game anymore. Everybody strikes out. How often is a ball in play today? Very little time. There's no action. It's strikeout or home run. And, I can see why it's getting boring to me. Where's the speed game? Where's the element that makes the outfielder look up just a peak too soon because a guy might go from first to third? Where's the stolen base today? Guy steals 30 bases, he leads the league. What a joke. We did that in a half a season.
You're right about that.
Right. Tell me the truth.
That's right. You stole 444 bags. That I believe that.
I have them all in my garage too. I stole all of them.
Is that right? I didn't even realize that.
No, I do not have them in my garage.
The 444. I didn't know you stole that.
I think so.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Nate does some good research. You know, he goes to Duke, so he's a pretty smart guy.
Oh, he's a smart dude then. I know if he's from North Carolina, he's a smart guy. He's got to be.
It's no Northwestern, but
that's what I told him. But I looked up the rankings, and it's actually ahead of Northwestern, so I dropped that.
Doesn't Northwestern have Notre Dame this next week? I mean,
I should know that, but I don't. I'm not sure.
That's going to be a tough one for Northwestern. Notre Dame's my football team, by the way.
Tough, but anyway. We have a good coach, so we're pretty happy. When I was there 4 years, won 2 games in 4 years. So we're much improved. Fitzgerald done a fantastic job. Fantastic.
Yeah. Much better.
Coach. What you played for a lot of teams, as Nate mentioned. You played on both coasts. You played in the Midwest. You played all over. Mm-hmm. Who, you're a character. I'm sure you're a favorite teammate of a lot of people, but who are some of your favorite teammates from those Dodgers or
John, I was so blessed to play with so many great players, Hall of Famers, with them, against them. Guys like Don Mattingly was one of my favorite teammates. Mike Scioscia was a great teammate. I mean, I could go on and list all the characters that were on my team. I got to play with Bo Jackson, Deion Sanders. I got to play with some unbelievable athletes. Best athlete I ever saw was Bo Jackson, hands down. It ain't even close. And I played with Deion and other guys. Nobody like Bo Jackson, the best athlete I've ever seen, and played on some really good teams too. I was fortunate to win 2 World Series and play in some All-Star games. So I was very fortunate and blessed to play at the time that I did, where baseball was really at its best, I think.
Yeah, I mean, you won 2 World Series in L.A., All-Star games, played everywhere. I didn't even realize – I knew you were fast, but I didn't realize you had stolen 4. Boy, the game has changed. Nobody's going to steal 444 bats anymore. But you know what? I think you deserve credit for you obviously had the throwing yips for a year there, and you were able to get –
Actually, 2 months.
I'm sorry.
That's all right. John, it was weird because people still ask me about this. I had 24 or 26 errors at the break, and after the break, I fixed it. And it's a long story in and of itself, but I was one of these guys that got over that problem. And there's many guys that have had it that didn't get over the problem, had to quit or change their position, and I went on to play another 15 years. So I was really lucky to get over it. Not only that, if I may boast about it, when I went to the American League, I led the league in fielding at my position 2 of the 3 years in New York, and the next year I was second. So I don't get hearing anything about that, but it's okay. I had Don Mattingly at first base and made it easy.
You overcame it. I didn't see any of that. I covered you with the Yankees. I didn't see any of it. What was it wasn't a touchy-feely era there, as you mentioned. Yeah. How did you overcome it? I mean, you're left probably to your own devices. Today, if someone's going through that, they'd probably give you 30 therapists and all sorts of things to try to get you through it.
They would.
How did you do it?
They would. It was actually a conversation I had with my dad that helped me get over this thing, because everybody was saying, you got a mental block, you got a mental problem, and my dad one time, and actually, John, this is the last conversation I ever had with my dad. He died some hours later after he told me this. He said, you can drive a car, right? I said, yeah. You can judge the distance back and forth. I said, yeah. And you can speak clearly. Yeah. He said, well, you don't have a mental block. He says, you don't have anything like a mental block. He says, what you have is a temporary loss of confidence. And once you get your confidence back, this thing will go away. And that's the last thing my dad ever told me. He says, and the way you build this up is you do it in practice. You get your confidence back in practice. Develop positive, things to do in practice, and you develop that way, your confidence will grow. You take that into the game. It's exactly what I did. And one day this thing was just gone, and it never came back. And it was the last words my dad ever gave me before he passed away the next day. And he showed me how to get over that thing in practice. It was just a loss of confidence. Once the confidence grew, things disappeared.
What a fantastic story. You had 24, 26 errors at the break. Yeah. And I think you finished with 30, something like that.
I had 6 the rest of the year, right.
Yeah, and never had it again. And what an amazing story. I mean, I don't want to pry or anything, but it was as sudden that your father passed away.
Yeah, my dad died when he was 47. He had heart disease, and his dad, my grandfather, who I never met, chronologically they died a month apart. My dad died in June, and my grandfather, at the same time my dad died, when he was at 47, died in May. And so they died about 1 month apart as far as their birthdays are both in June. So yeah, it was quite a thing, and my mom and dad, my mom passed away early too, so I lost both my parents at a young age. But what they gave us, we grew up on a farm. We didn't have any money, but we had a great family, and my family's very close today. All my brothers and sisters live close to me. My brother lives right across the street from me.
Dave.
And so yeah, so, right. And so my parents gave us a lot of intestinal fortitude, a lot of toughness. My dad was a real tough guy. And, they gave us a lot of love and togetherness too. And that's so I was fortunate. The greatest thing my family ever gave me was the love of our family. So it's always there.
And it's quite impressive that Dave also was a major league player. I didn't get to know him as well. I mean, he didn't have quite the major league career that you had. But, I mean, did you know playing Little League together or growing up? I think you were fairly close in age, so you may probably.
Yeah, we're 16 months apart.
Right.
My brother was always a better player than me.
Yeah.
We couldn't figure it out because I got drafted out of high school. My brother was 2 grades above me, and he was setting records all up and down the state at Cosumnes River College up here in Sacramento, and we couldn't figure out why he wasn't drafted. I mean, great arm. My brother could run. He didn't become a catcher until he was in the minor leagues, but he was setting all kinds of records up here. And so when the scout came to my house to sign me, my mom was a very effervescent Italian, and the scout came to the house to sign me. My mom just ripped into the scout. She turned this guy into, if you could picture, one of the Fuller Brush salesmen in the Midwest. She goes, you know what? I can't believe you didn't take my other son. He's better than Steven. What the heck is wrong with you guys? And the scout was like, well, Steven Mr. Saxon, we didn't see him that much. I don't know why we didn't draft David, but, well, whatever. And so, I signed my contract, and I was in Canada the next morning, right, at the lowest rookie ball level. And 2 days after I was there was a knock at the door. And I opened the door, and it was my brother with his suitcases packed full. And I said, what the heck are you doing here? And he said, well, after you left, you signed, Mom got on that scout so bad that she forced this guy to take my brother to a tryout camp in Santa Rosa. And my brother impressed the heck out of the guy. He signed my brother to a contract right there, and my brother played 15 years of professional ball, including a couple years in the big leagues, thanks to my mom. So I wonder who was the better scout here, that guy or my mother.
It pays to be assertive. Wow, that's
my mom just lit into this guy. What the heck are you doing? He's better than Steven. What are you thinking about here? So yeah, my mom was great.
That's terrific. And we know your radio, obviously we could tell here that you're quite a good speaker, and you were like that as a player as well. One of my favorite guys to cover, really.
Thanks.
And you know that. But
thank you.
What else? I mean, you've done like 10 different things, I think, right? Didn't you? Where did you politics?
I was a financial consultant for 10 years. I was a wealth manager, a wealth advisor at the Royal Bank of Canada at RBC for 10 years there. I thought about running for office out of baseball, but decided not to. I formed a committee and then decided not to run. I was at the time going through a divorce, and that's not a good time to run because people will invent things about you whether you like it or not. And so I didn't want to do that, and I'm glad I didn't do it. It would have been a complete invasion of one's privacy, and I didn't want to really go down there. So I got into, after I was a financial advisor for 10 years, I started speaking, and I'm still a motivational speaker. I speak all over the country. I found that I could do one speech and make more money in one speech than I did a whole month behind the desk as a financial consultant. So I sold that business and became a full-time speaker. I'm also a licensed International Coach Federation, ICF coach. I coach business people and executives in business, and I'm really lucky. And besides that, John, the last thing I want to tell you is everything I've done has been an absolute blessing. I've been really fortunate to do what I wanted to do, and I'm just really excited to be where I am right now, working in radio and doing my speeches and whatever. I'm at a good part of my life.
That's terrific. That's terrific. Did Tommy Lasorda was a kind of a pretty good public speaker too. Did he help you out with that too?
Tommy, and of course Tommy's gotten on in years now. But you should. I mean, you've heard Tommy, John. I mean, Tommy was one of the best speakers I've ever heard. He's what's important in speaking is you have to engage the audience. You have to make a connection with the audience in the first 30 seconds. That's the most important thing. You've got to connect with your audience. Tommy, by far, was the best, hands down, at making a connection with the audience. And then you have him right there for the rest of the time. Tommy was a magnificent speaker and such a good way of making that connection immediately with his audience. Everybody loved him from the beginning.
Yeah, I think that's what made him such a great manager. I've heard him tell the same joke 1,000 times and laugh, legitimately laugh the 1,000 times.
And you laugh at every one of them. And it's like, oh, my God, here comes a joke. It's like insert player's name, and here comes the punchline. And it's funny every time. It's just he's got a knack of doing that stuff.
Part of it is hearing that kind of salty R-rated language from a 91-year-old man. But the other part is the guy has fantastic timing, too.
He does. Impeccable timing, and you're right on when you talk about the salty flair with which he uses the language. He's pretty good at that, and he engages people immediately, and he never forgets a name too. Tommy is really good at that. Doesn't forget people's names and times and dates. He had an incredible memory.
Well, Steve, it's really been great having you. Before we let you go, though, who do you think is going to win the World Series now? We've got 4 teams. Obviously, some teams are up in the 3-1, that's an advantage. Yeah. What do you think? Is there anything that you point to right now that leads you to one of the teams?
I think if you had to look at it right now, obviously you'd have to say Boston and LA because they're both up. It's the easy one to pick. But if it does go that way, it's the Dodgers and Brewers are built a lot alike now. Both teams have led the league 1 and 2 in home runs, lots of strikeouts. Both teams pitch well, except the Dodgers probably better in starting pitching. The Brewers better, of course, in the bullpen. But the Dodgers have been really lacking that small ball flair, which they really didn't do all year. They're not built that way. But the last game, they got some hits with runners on base, singled the ball up the middle, were trying to pull everything, kind of took what the pitcher gave them, and they really were able to benefit from that approach. So if they continue to do that, I think the Dodgers, not because I'm a homer, but I think they may have a slight edge on them. Got a deep bench, man. They really are deep. And as far as the American League goes, I'm a little surprised that the Red Sox are up 3-1. I think the Houston Astros are just incredible starting pitching. Those 3 guys at the top with Cole, Keuchel, and of course Verlander to start are just amazing. But they've been able to get through them. So Jackie Bradley Jr. has been the biggest surprise, for the Red Sox.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So
anyway,
great having you, Steve.
I don't know who I'd pick. I think maybe as it says now, it could change, but as I look at it, it might be Boston and LA. And I think that's what the networks would want, wouldn't you, John?
I kind of
Matt, think they'd want Boston and LA.
Yeah, they do feel like it's a kind of a consolation prize. I think if Milwaukee gets in or a team like that gets in, they can say, "Oh, we have parity. Everything's great in baseball," but the ratings is really what drives it. So I mean, they're not going to admit it, but I'm kind of with you. I think they prefer Boston and LA.
And Milwaukee had the best record in the National League. I mean, this is a completely different team. I mean, from last year, this is a different looking team. And I think the acquisitions of Kane and Yelich at the top of the order. Yelich, of course, is going to be the MVP in my estimation, and along with many other people. But Kane and Yelich, what a dynamic duo at the top of this order. You look at other guys about Altuve and Springer. You can look at Acuna Jr. and Ozzie Albies. I mean, there's lots of other places to look, but Kane and Yelich have got to be at the top of the heap when you look at guys that have just kind of really play off one another. These guys set the table, and they've got home run pop too.
Right, and they got them within one 24-hour period, so really fantastic.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah, incredible. And then they added so many pieces between Moustakas and Miley and Kratz, and just an incredible job that they did on $100 million. The other 3 teams averaged $200 million. They're $100 million, so you get extra credit for that, but that's not going to help you win the World Series in the end. They got to win on the field.
Yeah, and Jesus Aguilar too was a bench guy last year, and he's really come full circle for this team. Wade Miley has resurrected his career now that he's throwing that cutter and able to repeat his mechanics. Wade Miley uses that cutter as his fastball, and it's been absolutely devastating for the opposition. Wade Miley has been a completely different pitcher. And by the way, I don't like that little shenanigan they pulled yesterday. 1 hitter and he's out. Now he pitches game 6. That's really bush league, man. I didn't like that at all.
I think Craig Counsell, I think he's a savant. As I told Doug Melvin, we had him before. Fantastic. He's great, but what was the point? They got Freeze out of the game a little bit by doing that, and in the end, you have a pitcher starting who wasn't really prepared for a start. He's only throwing one
right.
hitter. What happened? He walked him. I don't think that trade-off
Yeah.
is worth it. A walk versus Freeze out of the game. I like Freeze,
Well,
good player, but if I'm at LA, I'd take the walk. You know.
Well, the other thing too is I think LA kind of smelled that out because they had Bellinger leading off. Now you're not going to normally lead Bellinger off against a left-hander, right?
Right.
But I think Dave Roberts kind of had hedge in his bet, not all in, but I think they was kind of ready for, you know, if it does turn out to be this way, at least we have Bellinger leading off and he's a left-handed hitter. So
Absolutely right. Absolutely right.
yeah.
All right. Very good, Steve.
Yeah. All
Steve,
right,
real-
guys.
real
Well,
quick, just-
thank you. Yeah,
I'm just real
sure.
quick before you go. When you see these 4 teams left, a couple of them sort of veteran talents, deep bench, and then you got young cores on a couple of these teams. Which one of these teams is going to be the best for the longest?
In the long haul, God, I'll tell you what. There's so much young talent today. I mean, it's just falling off the baseball trees. I mean, there is so much talent. Jackie Bradley Jr. You look at this guy; he's 5'9", about 170 pounds. And did you see how far? I have a static picture of him jumping for that ball. It looks like he's about 10 feet off the ground. I mean, his vertical has got to be amazing. You talk about guys we take for granted. It's amazing the athleticism of this young guy.
You're talking about Betts, right? Mookie Betts?
Betts.
Yeah.
Is that what I said? What did I say? Jackie Bradley Jr.?
They're all fantastic defenders. They're all.
Yeah, I meant Betts. I meant Mookie Betts. His vertical has got to be amazing. And there's a lot of young talent too. You know, all over the place. You know, you got the Brewers have got some young talent that's really untapped. I don't think they get a lot of credit for the young talent they have in the pitching department. You look like Freddie Peralta. You look at Woodruff. You got some guys in there that got some really good arms. Josh Hader, of course, he's starting to get a lot of acclaim for what he can do out of the bullpen. There's a lot of good talent in baseball today. I don't know which one I'd pick the most. I mean, you know, you got Walker Buehler with the Dodgers. It's just spread out. He to me looks like a young Oral Hershiser. John, I know you covered Oral for a long time and out there in L.A. Wouldn't you say that Walker Buehler's got a chance to be a really, really top-line pitcher?
Oh, my God. Throwing 98.
I mean, the stuff is ridiculous.
Fantastic. I mean, he looks like he's about 15 years old. Tommy John, and he throws even harder. He's going to be a huge star. I'm with you on that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. So, you know, Matt, the talent is everywhere, all over this place. And, you know, Rafael Devers from Boston, you know, 20 years old. He's 20 or 21 years old, playing third base. And, you know, the guy can hit left-handers already. You saw with the first he was the first guy to barrel up a fastball from Chapman and hit it the other way. I think it was his first time he ever faced Chapman in Yankee Stadium. For a young guy to do something like that, undaunted as he comes up to the plate and able to hit the ball the other way against Chapman. Are you kidding me? I mean, the talent is everywhere. It's on every team. So it's not just these 4 teams. It's all over the place.
Yep, amazing. Lefty on lefty. I remember that.
Yeah.
Incredible. Yeah. Boston, they drafted great. Bogarts, Betts, Benintendi, Bradley, all of them. Really fantastic job by them. But Houston, wow, they got a great team. So.
Yeah, how about Bregman? Just a couple of years ago, he was playing at LSU, and now look what he's been doing. This guy is already entering superstardom. The moment doesn't faze him. You know, he does it both. We saw the plays he makes defensively, and of course his offense. Every time, if he doesn't get a hit, this guy's ticked off every single time that he doesn't get a hit. That's what I like about him. You know, he might toss a helmet or, you know, slam the bat down a little bit. I like guys that do that. Rich Hill came in the other day and just took out the candy dish in Dodger Stadium dugout. I was going, yeah, Richie, I like that stuff. Way to go. He should see some passion. What's that?
He didn't pitch that bad to do that. It was
no.
But
he didn't.
He was upset.
He's pretty good.
But you're right. Bregman's got an edge. So that's
yes.
He's going to be obviously already is a big star, huge.
Yeah, and we kind of take for granted guys like Carlos Correa, who's you know, had a bit of a pullback this year because of injuries, but he's going to be great. The athleticism you see at these middle parts of the infield, the second base and shortstop now. I mean, it looks like they're drafting football players, and these guys are expected to hit home runs, play defense, cover lots of ground. I mean, how about the arm and the ground that Manny Machado has at third base? I've seen him throw guys at left field going away from first base, you know, getting that ball in short left field and turn around in one motion and throwing people out. I mean, those plays just weren't made before. And guys like him and Didi Gregorius can make that play, you know, routinely now. It's crazy how the athlete has elevated itself. and they're just better players now than when I played. They just really are.
Right. The athlete under 30, the baseball player, the Trout, the Arenado, right, Machado, who can play short and third, fantastic. So it's interesting.
We're in for some good stuff in the future, John. That's for sure.
But what do you call it about the way the game is played?
It's called the wimpification of the American sportsman.
I like that.
Yeah, I've said it a few times on the air, and I believe it's true. It's not just in baseball; it's everywhere. Football, you see these guys; they should just play with flags. Just pull the flag on the guy and let him. He's down. Or touch football. You know what I mean? It's crazy. Look at the Pro Bowl. You see the Pro Bowl? They should just hold them and don't even bring them to the ground. It's so ridiculous how deftly they touch these guys now. In baseball, you can't even touch them. You can't. Did you see the other day where Machado just touched him with his hand? He called both guys out. I'm like, are you serious?
Oh yeah.
I mean, he barely touched him.
Yeah, well,
you know what it is? It's legal now. Everything is legal. Let's go back to New York and see if there's one of his shoelaces touched him, so legally he touched him. We're going to call both these guys out. Oh, God. Come on.
You're funny.
Serious. Come on. Really. Let him play.
All right. Very good.
Thank God for boxing and hockey, guys. Thank God for boxing and hockey.
They're the same sport. All right. Great to see you, Steve.
You too. Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me on. Steve. You bet. Take care.
All right, John, we got great guests tonight. That was a blast. It's cool to see people that played in different eras. Steve has just been really successful after having played, and great to hear from him.
Absolutely, and his story about how his father helped cure him of the yips, and then died the next day. Incredible. I had never heard that before.
Yeah, that's incredible. It's not surprising that he's a successful motivational speaker.
It certainly is not. He's quite
there. Before we wrap up, we got a question. We got Alex in the comments. Harper, do you think any chance he stays with the Nats?
I think so. In fact, I wrote about that on FanCred today. They're going to give it a run. They love the guy. They absolutely want him back. I don't think this is going to happen with Machado and the Dodgers. He's gone. But the Nats love Bryce Harper. They've had him forever. Homegrown kid, still 20. I think he just turned 26 the other day. I was going to say still 25, but they want to try to keep him. And they have worked with Scott Boras in the past, as we know. They had the long-term deal with Scherzer. They had a long-term deal with Strasburg. And I think they're going to try to work it out. But, when someone gets to be a free agent, normally we expect them to move on. Not always the case. Bernie Williams got to be a free agent, 98, same agent, Scott Boras. He came back to the Yankees, signed for, I believe it was $1 million less than Boston had offered. And would that have changed history if he had gone to Boston? But he signed back with the Yankees for $1 million less. I think it was 87.5 or 88.5, something like that, over 7 years maybe it was. But Harper will be a lot more money wherever it is, whether it be in Washington or Philadelphia. I think those are probably the two favorites. We'll see about San Francisco. I see people speculating on San Francisco, but they don't even have a GM right now. So I don't know how you can really speculate too seriously on the Giants yet, although I've done it in the past. But we will see. I would say Washington, Philly are probably the two most likely for Harper.
Well, that'll definitely be fun to keep an eye on. It could be some big numbers being thrown around this winter.
Absolutely. I don't know. We'll see if someone can break the record, $325 million by Giancarlo Stanton. Last year was a tough winter for a lot of the guys, but these are two very, very, very special players, 26 years old. And as I said, Harper just turned 26, and it's rare to see a free agent star at that age. We saw that with A-Rod, obviously, when he signed with Texas, that first record deal, $252 million with the opt-out that turned into another $275 million. So he did pretty well for himself. We will see if Harper and Machado can do as well for themselves.
That's right. Another shortstop who moved to third, so maybe there's precedent.
You're absolutely right about that. Very good. But we'll see. Machado may move back to third. He's going the other way, but he may go back to third. And I thought he was fantastic at third. I mean, everybody did. Probably tied with Arenado, best third baseman in the game. And this is an era of great third basemen, obviously Beltre and several others, Longoria. But I think he and Arenado Machado are the two best at third. So I'd kind of like him to see him play third, but he's looked pretty good as a shortstop with the Dodgers, I've got to say.
An amazing skill set. Well, looks like it's time to wrap it up. John, it's been great talking to you. It's what a great trio of guests we had tonight. That was fun.
Great to talk to you, Nate. We'll see you next week.
All right, thanks. Thank you all for coming, and we'll see you next week.